What would you do if confidence had actually never been your problem until it was? Helen is a busy professional in her 50s, and she's the kind of person who doesn't need external motivation. She's driven, capable, and completely action-orientated in every area of her life. But in the gym, specifically in the free weights area, she felt something she was not used to feeling. Out of place. Intimidated, like she didn't belong there and everyone around her could tell. For someone who identified as a confident person, that experience was genuinely uncomfortable. Not just inconvenient, uncomfortable, because it didn't fit the story she had about herself. In 10 months, Helen went from avoiding the weights area entirely to walking in, setting up, and owning her space. Her strength increased significantly. Her flexibility improved to a level she had never expected. Her energy is consistently higher, and the confidence she rebuilt in the gym carried into every other part of her life. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how we did that and why it matters for anyone, not just in the gym. I'm Loz Antonenko, health and performance coach, and Helen's situation, the high performer in a motivational trough, the confident person who's lost confidence in one specific domain, is something I work with regularly. It's one of the most underserved coaching challenges out there because the person experiencing it often dismisses it. I'm a confident person, I shouldn't feel like this, right? I'll just push through, that's what they say. Except pushing through without the right structure, well, it often doesn't work, and often they feel worse, not better. What Helen needed wasn't a pep talk though. She needed a progressive system that was specifically designed to build capacity in the area she felt least capable, but in a way that was grounded, evidence-based, and guaranteed to produce visible results over time. That's what we built. And 10 months later, well, the results speak for themselves. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why high performers often struggle with specific domains of confidence in a way that lower stakes individuals don't, what a confidence architecture actually is and how it's built progressively, not with motivation but with capability, and the exact programming sequence we used with Helen to move her from avoidance to ownership in 10 months. Here's how the video is structured. First, I'll walk you through where Helen was and why the confidence gap felt so significant for someone with her self-concept. And then I'll break down the 3 pillars: the confidence architecture, progressive strength programming, and owning the environment. Then her full timeline, results, and where to start if this is your story. Let's go. To understand Helen's situation, you need to understand who Helen is first. She's a busy professional in her 50s. Action-orientated, self-motivated. She doesn't wait to feel inspired to do things, she just does them. That's her operating mode. In most areas of her life, confidence isn't something she even has to think about. It's just there, running quietly in the background, the way good foundations always are. But fitness, particularly strength training, particularly free weights, was completely different. There was something about standing in the weights area of the gym surrounded by people who clearly looked like they knew what they were doing, picking up some heavy object and risking looking like she had no idea, that genuinely unsettled her. She knew intellectually that everyone starts somewhere, and she probably told clients or colleagues that exact thing at some point in her life, but knowing it and feeling it are 2 very different things. And standing in the free weights section at the gym, she didn't feel it at all. What she felt was, I don't belong here yet. She also experienced what she describes as peaks and troughs in her training motivation. She'd get on a roll, consistent, energized, building momentum, and then something would just disrupt her. Maybe a busy period at work, a week where she felt like she missed a few sessions, and the next time she went to the gym, the intimidation was worse than before, because now she'd also lost the consistency thread. And restarting, well, it felt harder every time she went back. I want to take a moment on something that I think is really important and really under-discussed in fitness coaching, and that's the specific relationship that high-performing women have with domains where they don't yet have competence. Here's what I observe consistently. The more capable a person is in most areas of their life, the harder it is to be a beginner in any other area. Not because they're arrogant, but because the gap between their overall self-concept and their performance in the new domain feels way larger. A person who doesn't identify as particularly capable can walk into a gym and think, oh, of course, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, I'm still figuring it out. There's no self-concept dissonance there. And the gap, well, it meets and matches the expectation. But a person who identifies as highly capable, who is, in most situations, competent and confident, well, they feel that beginner gap completely acutely, right? This doesn't match who I am. I'm not someone who doesn't know what they're doing. And that dissonance creates avoidance, shame around the gap, and often paralysis that stops them from starting at all. Confidence is domain specific. You can be exceptionally capable in 10 areas of your life and a genuine beginner in the 11th. That's not a contradiction. That's reality. But if no one names it for you, it can actually feel like a character flaw. Now, Helen had that exact experience, and the first thing we needed to do was help her see it clearly, not as a reflection of her overall capability, but as a domain-specific gap that could then be addressed systematically. Left unaddressed, the pattern Helen was experiencing has a natural trajectory, and it's not a good one. The avoidance of intimidating environments means that she never gets exposed to it, right? And without exposure, well, competence never builds. Without competence, confidence never grows. Without confidence, the environment, it stays intimidating. And every time the cycle completes, the avoidance becomes slightly more entrenched and the return slightly harder. This is why motivation-based approaches almost never work for this pattern. Motivation, it doesn't build confidence. You can feel motivated to do something and still not do it if you don't have the capability framework to support the motivation. What breaks the cycle, it's not more motivation, it's structured, progressive exposure, building competence in small, guaranteed steps so that the environment gradually becomes familiar rather than threatening. That's what the confidence architecture is designed to do. I want to challenge something that most people believe about confidence because I think it's responsible for a lot of really unnecessary suffering. Most people believe confidence is a feeling that you have before you do something. You feel confident, and then you act. That's backwards, right? That's the exact opposite of how confidence actually works. Confidence is a residue. It's what accumulates as evidence that you can do something built through repeated action. So you act, especially when you don't feel confident, and the action produces a result. The result provides evidence, and the evidence builds a belief, and the belief becomes confidence. You can't think your way to confidence. You can't wait for it to arrive. You build it deliberately, progressively, by doing the thing in increasingly challenging versions until the thing no longer feels threatening. The confidence architecture is the structure I use to make that process systematic rather than haphazard. And it has three main components. The first component is what I call the foundation phase. This is a deliberate establishment of competence in the most basic version of the intimidating environment or activity, with zero expectations of performance and 100% focus on familiarity. So for Helen, this meant starting not in the weights area at all, right? So what we started with was Pilates. Now, Helen would have told you she wasn't a Pilates person. She held, as she described in her actual words, very limiting beliefs about certain modalities. Pilates was absolutely something she associated with people who were different from her. But here's why Pilates was the right starting point. Pilates, it built the foundations of body awareness, mobility, core strength, and proprioception that would make strength training both safer and more effective. It also creates really early wins, very small, genuine improvements in movement quality and flexibility that she hadn't expected. Within a few weeks, she discovered she could actually touch her toes. Now, she had not been able to do that for years, and she hadn't actually expected it to happen. But that single unexpected result, that small piece of evidence that her body was responding and changing, was the very first brick in the confidence architecture. Evidence that change is happening is the single most powerful fuel for continued action. We manufactured it deliberately, early, before moving to the harder work. Once the foundation was established, i.e. once Helen had several months of Pilates and foundational movement under her belt, we transitioned her into the progression phase. Now, this was the gradual introduction of strength training, started with guided machines and bodyweight exercises, and progressively moving towards free weights in terms of competence and familiarity that she built. The key principle of the progression phase is that every single session should end with Helen feeling more capable than when she started, not exhausted, not defeated, not overwhelmed, but more capable. Because more capable means more evidence, and more evidence, builds the architecture. We also worked on the script, the internal narrative that she ran in the gym. I don't belong here was replaced gradually through evidence, not through affirmations, with I'm building toward this, which eventually became I know what I'm doing here. That narrative shift, it doesn't happen through willpower. It happens through accumulated experience, week by week, session by session. The environment, well, it became more familiar, the movements became more competent, and the confidence accumulated in the background like interest on an investment. The ownership phase is the point at which the environment stops feeling like somewhere you're allowed to be and starts feeling like somewhere where you actually belong. For Helen, this was the moment she walked into the weights area, set up her space, and didn't scan the room to see if anyone else was watching or judging. She just started, right? She knew what she was doing. She'd earned her place there, not through permission, but through competence. This is not a small thing, and I want to be very clear about that. Because for a woman who had avoided this environment for months or even years really, walking in with ownership, you know what, that's a genuine transformation. Not of the body of just alone, but in her entire self-concept of the story she tells about who she is and what she's even capable of. And that transformation doesn't just stay in the gym. You know, it doesn't just stop at the door. When you prove to yourself that you can build competence in an area that intimidated you, that you can move from avoidance to ownership through deliberate progressive action, you've demonstrated something to yourself that applies everywhere. And that's the real result of what Helen achieved. So let me talk about the programming itself, because I think there's a version of Helen's journey that looks like a motivational story, and I want to be really honest that it wasn't primarily that. What it was primarily a programming story, right? The motivation, well, it followed results. The results followed a structure, and the structure was designed carefully so that Helen was always trying at the level that was slightly challenging without being defeating. Now, there's a concept in performance psychology called the zone of proximal development, and that's the idea that the most effective training and learning and growth happens at the edge of your current capability, right? Too easy, no stimulus. Too hard, and then you got overwhelmed, you got injury risk, and the kind of failure that damages confidence rather than building it up. The zone of proximal development is where all of Helen's programming was designed to live. Just enough challenge to produce adaptation, but never enough to produce defeat. Phase 1. Months 1 through to 3 were Pilates focused. Core strength, mobility, flexibility, proprioception, low intimidation, high early wins. Foundation for everything that followed. Phase 2. Months 4 through to 6 introduced structured resistance training. Machines, cables, bodyweight exercises with added load. Now, the environment was controlled, the movements were guided, and Helen could see her numbers improving week upon week. Weight lifted, reps completed, range of motion improved. Very tangible, trackable evidence. Phase 3. Months 7 through to 10 transitioned into free weights. Dumbbells, barbells, compounded movements. This is the environment that had initially intimidated her, and by this point, she had 6 months of progressive strength training behind her. She'd had the movement patterns, the strength base, and the self-trust to handle the environment she'd previously avoided. So the transition to free weights, it wasn't scary by the time it came because she was ready. And the programming, well, it had made sure that she was actually ready. I want to explain a concept that I think is deeply underappreciated in the context of confidence, and that's progressive overload. In strength training, progressive overload means consistently increasing the demand placed on the body over time, i.e. more weight, more reps, more sets, shorter rest periods, so that the body is always adapting rather than plateauing. But progressive overload also functions as a confidence mechanism, because when you can see week upon week that you're lifting more than you could last week, doing more than you could last month, capable of things that were genuinely impossible when you first started, that visible, measurable improvement, it does something to you psychologically. What it does is it gives you evidence, real, undeniable, in your body evidence that you're capable of way more than you thought. And that evidence, it's the architecture of confidence. Helen tracked her progress, and seeing those numbers move, seeing herself go from machine-based to free weights, from not being able to touch her toes to moving with genuine flexibility and strength, it created a feedback loop that made each session easier to show up for than the last one. Momentum is built by evidence, not by motivation. Give yourself evidence regularly, deliberately, in writing if necessary, because the mind doesn't track progress automatically. You have to show it. The third pillar of Helen's transformation is what I call owning the environment. And I want to spend some time on this because I think it's the part that gets the least attention in fitness coaching, but delivers some of the most long-lasting value. Owning environment means you no longer experience it as a place where you're evaluated. Instead, you experience it as a place where you work. So that shift from being evaluated to just working is really, really profound. And it removes the self-consciousness that burns so much energy when you're getting new and good at something. The constant background monitoring of what other people might be thinking, the hypervigilance about whether you're doing it right, the comparison to everyone around you who seems more capable. When you own the environment, all of that noise goes quiet. You're just there to do the work. And without the noise, the work, well, it's better. It's more consistent and significantly more enjoyable. So we worked on 3 specific things that built environment ownership for Helen. The first, it was preparation. Before she ever walked into the weights area independently, she knew exactly what she was going to do. The session, it was written out. She had the exercises, the sets, the reps, the weights. She wasn't going to walk in and look around wondering what to do. She was going to walk in and execute a plan. And that preparation eliminated the biggest source of visible uncertainty. The second was deliberate exposure. We specifically put her in the environment she found intimidating, on purpose, gradually and repeatedly, so that the unfamiliarity wore off through familiarity. The gym floor stopped feeling like someone else's territory and started feeling like a place where she'd been heaps of times before because she actually had. And the third was reframing the comparison. One of the most common thoughts in an intimidating gym environment is, oh, everyone else here is better than me, right? So we worked on replacing that with, everyone else here is in the gym somewhere on their own journey, just like I'm somewhere on my own journey, right? Not toxic positivity, but genuine perspective. The person lifting the heaviest in the gym was also, at some point, exactly where Helen was standing right now. I said earlier that what Helen achieved didn't just stay in the gym, and I want to close this section by explaining that specifically. Helen describes something at the end of our work together that I think is one of the most honest and important things a client has ever said to me about a transformation. She said that what she gained in the gym wasn't just strength and flexibility, it was proof. Proof that she could be a beginner at something and persist through the discomfort long enough to become competent. Proof that the troughs that she experienced, the dips in motivation, the loss of consistency, were temporary states, not permanent features. Proof that she was someone who could start from basics and build toward capability, not someone who either hadn't had capability or had capability. She took that proof with her into her professional life, into her personal challenges, into every situation she encountered where something new and daunting reared its head. She now had evidence in her body, in her muscles, in the weight she lifted that she is someone who builds towards difficult things. And that is what 10 months of progressive, structured training can produce. Not just a stronger body, a changed understanding of what you're actually capable of. Let me walk you through the timeline because I think it's important to be honest that this was a 10-month process, right? And that 10 months, it's not long when you're building something designed to last the rest of your life. Months 1 through to 3. The foundation phase, Pilates focus, core strength, flexibility, movement quality, early wins designed deliberately. Helen discovered she could touch her toes. Small proof, big impact. Months 4 to 6. The progression phase. Resistance training introduced, machines and guided exercise, numbers tracked, progressive, visible evidence, the confidence architecture beginning to build week upon week as the evidence accumulated. Month 7 through to 10, the ownerships phase. Free weights introduced progressively. The environment that had felt threatening became familiar, and the familiarity, it became competence. The competence, it then became confidence, and the confidence became ownership. By month 10, Helen was walking into the weights area and setting up without scanning the room. She was lifting significantly more than when she started. She was flexible in ways that she hadn't been in years. Her daily energy was higher, and she had the proof in her body and in her behaviour that she was someone who builds towards difficult things. If you recognise yourself in Helen's story, if confidence and training is something you've struggled with, if the weights area feels like somewhere where you're not supposed to be yet, here's where to start. Week 1. Find the lowest intimidation entry point. Not the thing that you want to be doing eventually, but the thing that you can do now without feeling exposed. And for many women, that's a class with structure and guidance. Pilates, yoga, a group fitness class, something where you're not making decisions alone in an intimidating environment. Week 2, start tracking one metric, just one though. Anything measurable. Flexibility, a specific exercise, a weight, a walking distance. You need evidence, and evidence requires measurement. So pick something and then watch it move. Week 3, prepare before you walk in. Write the session before you go. Know what you're going to do. The uncertainty of not having a plan is one of the biggest drivers of avoidance, so remove it. Month 2 onwards, introduce progressive challenge. Every single session should be slightly harder than the last. More weight, more reps, more range. The progression is the confidence builder, right? So don't stay comfortable. Stay at the edge. In 10 months, strength significantly increased across all major movement patterns. Flexibility improved to a level she genuinely didn't expect, including being able to touch her toes for the first time in years. Daily energy consistently higher. Free weights move from complete avoidance to confident, independent use. Gym environment move from intimidating to owned. Motivational troughs, still experienced, but now navigated with a system rather than fighting them with willpower alone. And the result that sits above all the physical ones, Helen now identifies as someone who builds towards difficult things. And that identity, that self-concept, is the most durable result of the work that we did together. Because, you know what, it doesn't expire when the program ends. Physical results are temporary without the identity to sustain them. The identity we built for Helen is permanent. Before the confidence architecture, peaks and troughs, avoidance of the weight area, motivation-dependent consistency, a self-concept that didn't include someone who lifts weights. After, structured progression, environmental ownership, evidence-based confidence, and an identity that includes capability in exactly the area she once avoided. Same person, different architecture, completely different relationship with herself. 3 pillars, 1 transformation of self. Pillar 1, the confidence architecture. Understand that confidence is built through evidence, not motivation, and build it deliberately through structured progressive exposure that always keeps you at the edge of your capability rather than beneath it or beyond it. Pillar 2, progressive strength programming. Build the physical capability systematically with programming designed to stay in the zone of proximal development, i.e. challenging enough to drive adaptation, structured enough to prevent defeat. Pillar 3, owning the environment. Through preparation, deliberate exposure, and perspective, shift from being evaluated in the environment to just working in it. That shift is worth more than any single workout. If you take one thing from Helen's story, confidence is not a prerequisite for starting. It's a consequence of not stopping. Start before you're ready. Do the smallest version of the intimidating thing and track the evidence that you're changing. And then just repeat until that thing that felt impossible is just what you do on a Tuesday. You don't need to feel confident to start. You need to start to feel confident. If Helen's story resonated you, if you're a capable, driven person who has a gap between your overall self-concept and your confidence in the gym, I want to help you find your answer, and the quiz is the fastest way to get there. The link below, it takes you to the Fix Your Mojo quiz, our free 2-minute diagnostic that identifies exactly what's getting in the way of your results and then points you straight to the fix. We'll look at where you are, what your specific gap is, and whether the confidence architecture approach is the right fit for your situation. No pressure, no pitch, just a clear conversation about what's actually going on and what the path forward looks like. So the quiz link is in the description below. It takes 2 minutes and the results are immediate. And if this video describes someone you know, a capable, high-functioning woman who avoids the gym or finds herself in motivational troughs that she doesn't understand, share it with her. Because sometimes the most helpful thing is simply having your experience actually named accurately. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.